This is Living Power with Hurst.
Matthew chapter 6. You have that in your Bible study guide. That's where we're going to park today. But it begins, and we looked a little bit at this passage last Sunday, about, and this is Jesus speaking, and he is so, this is probably one of the most radical, this is for a lot of, I think for a lot of the Pharisees and probably Sadducees, this is what really did it for them. You know, they were not too happy with Jesus anyway. But when Jesus said these words, it probably turned the screws for them. And it starts in verse 5. Jesus is saying, and he's speaking to his disciples, he's speaking to his followers, but remember, the Pharisees and some of the Sadducees are there listening. And this is what Jesus said. And when you pray, don't be like the hypocrites. He didn't even call them. He didn't say don't be like the Pharisees or the Sadducees. He just says don't be like the hypocrites. And everybody knew what Jesus was saying. They love to pray standing in the synagogues and on the street corners to be seen by men. I tell you the truth, they've received their full reward. Well, that's what they would do. And the Pharisees would stand on a corner and they would raise their arms out, and then they would have these long, eloquent prayers so that everybody would hear them and see them praying and think, wow, they're really spiritual. Those people really, they're really in touch with God, and they've really got it together. And Jesus was saying, those people are hypocrites. That's not right. Full of hypocrisy. I don't know. Hypocrites. Those people have got what they wanted. They wanted recognition. They got it. He said, but that's not why you pray. That's not what it's all about. When you pray, go into your room, close the door, pray to your Father who is unseen, and your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you. Now, I want us to take a look real quickly, and we're kind of recapping a little bit about some of the things that we talked about last Sunday. But there are some wrong ways to pray. And some of those ways are really dangerous. But one of the first things that we see is in verses 5 and 6, and that's just false praying, that hypocritical praying. That is that pretending praying, because that's not really praying. That's just going through the motions and sometimes even the emotions of praying. But it isn't real prayer. And then secondly, using prayer to build personal esteem. That's that false praying. I'm praying to build myself up. I'm praying so that I will feel better about myself and that others will feel better about me. I can't tell you how rewarding it is to be with somebody, particularly with new Christians, who don't know the words. They don't know the right things to say. When, you know, the right things to say, like we would have the right things to say, you know, the churchy things to say. Oh, thou God of Abraham, you know, that's how you're, I don't know if you know that, but that's how you're supposed to pray, right? Oh, thou God of Abraham, and Isaac, and Jacob. Don't you pray that way? Who prays that way? Hypocrites. But when you're with, like, you know, now sure enough, there's going to be somebody stand up in church next Sunday and pray that way. Don't think that I'm thinking, I won't be thinking that. Anyway, but have you ever been around a brand new Christian who's learning how to pray? I'll tell you, one of the greatest prayers I'd ever heard in my life was a young man. I was at a church, and this guy, he'd come forward to church, and he wanted to get right with God, and I saw him come to know the Lord. And I said, now, you need to pray and just ask God to take control. Give your life over to Him. Be honest with Him. Tell Him how you feel. He said, well, I've never prayed before. And I said, well, that's what prayer is. It's just talking to God, telling Him how you feel, and being honest with God. And this was his prayer. God, I suck. It was awesome. It was so awesome. You know, it was just that honesty that God, I am the dregs. I'm not what I'm supposed to be. That's what he was saying. It's like, it's like the thief on the cross probably hadn't prayed before either. When Jesus said, when he said, the thief turns to Jesus and he says, remember me. And what a great prayer that is. Can you imagine just praying that? Remember me when you come into your kingdom. Just remember me, God. Know me? Remember me. This simple, honest, straightforward prayer from the heart. And that's what Jesus is teaching here. He's saying it's not about all the big words and the fancy ways of talking and going through all of those other things that we tend to do. It's to be private and personal. And it's not to be manipulation praying. Verses 7 and 8. And when you pray, don't keep on babbling like pagans, for they think they'll be heard because of their many words. Don't be like them, for your Father knows what you need before you ask Him. I love what this is saying, because what Jesus was saying is that prayer is not about asking for the same thing over and over and over until you get it. It's not some sort of superstition where if you just say the right combination of words that you cast some sort of spell and, like the pagans attempt to do. It's not like that. That's not what it is at all.